Good morning. Thanks for coming out so early. I know that's hard for most of us. So today, I'm going to put out some thoughts on modern technology, a bit of sort of economics, maybe even, kind of. And my title is kind of technocratic and long, so you're excused if you didn't quite read it. So it's about tools and globalization and stuff. But these are really powerful forces. Like there's really big things going on in the world, and technology is taking over, and acceleration is happening, and it's overwhelming and scary and wonderful. And of course, we're at the very epicenter of it here. Like you guys are the people actually creating these changes. So be careful and be focused and mindful, and let's just go through a few concepts that I've sort of been caring about lately. So access to tools versus global taxation. There's these very powerful forces where in technology, winner takes all or winner takes most, and that means that for every category, like some companies are being created that lead and dominate and attract they create a massive amount of productivity, which is wonderful, by being tools for other things. We build platforms. But at the same time, we get taxation on these industries, attracted by sort of very like almost black hole gravity companies. And software is leading the world. There's these unbelievably powerful forces where people are writing code to accelerate every industry. It's really cool, but it's also overwhelming. Now, my company, which I won't really talk much about, was sort of born into this world. We came at the world with the idea that we wanted to create tools to help people build stuff, be creative, create games, as the case might be, which means we have a lot of customers here, which is fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. 1.5 million developers are working actively on our software to build all kinds of applications in the game industry and other industries, from mobile to VR to AR and beyond. That's really cool. And we came at building this company with this kind of fundamental belief in tools. Tools that create productivity gains and accelerate things, and by sort of being easier and more accessible, democratize one industry, which in our case was the 3D interactive experience industry with a focus on games. And this obsession with building tools, I think it comes natural to programmers, it comes natural to software developers. But frankly, like we were looking to the kind of creator of the computer industry, in particular maybe this guy, who was also obsessed with tools, and I think it's very core to our industry to do that. And he didn't invent it either. He often quoted one of the most amazing, strange publications that I think we should go more back to, which is the Whole Earth catalog. If you don't know this thing, it has it's a catalog from which you can order tools. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a big thing in '68 before the internet. And the subtitle is, access to tools. How to get tools to do your work, how to get tools to do things. And being inspired by my company, seeing what it's been able to do with a whole industry, sort of democratizing and revolutionizing a whole sector of capitalism, and being obsessed with tools and the productivity gains they create, I've started looking at the world in gradients, and one of the main gradients is toolness. Okay, so you have sort of on the very left, you have things that are barely tools. I mean, a tomato is a technology, by the way, but it's a tool to satisfy your hunger, sure, but it's not so much a tool. Then you get more tools, the scissors, Photoshop, and Facebook for doing different things. And then you get the power tools, the incredible tools, the meta tools, platforms on which you build other tools, with C++ as maybe the most extreme example, the pure meta tool. It's of course amazing, and we use it in our daily work. So if you think if you start laying out technologies in the spectrum, I think it gives a clear view on what we're doing, and there's a good framework for thinking about our work, okay? So once you start playing with gradients like that, you can actually, and often, the question is like, what are games? What are the products we're creating? How do they fit into cultural sort of spectrum? And you can actually, I think, put a gradient out of cultural products from, exploring the human condition and teaching us about each other and our relationships on the one end, to the other extreme, which is sort of exploring vestigial urges, like urges that really have no place anymore, but are sort of left over by evolution. And I love Candy Crush. It's probably the game I've spent the most time with. I don't want to call it out as a bad thing, but it's really just kind of exploring vestigial urges that we have that don't really make sense. And again, you can plot all the products out on that, and that sort of leads you to the next gradient, where you can sort of look at all capitalism, I think, and almost on the same, capitalism is a wonderful tool to bring out technology innovation, and it does really important things, but it also does really absurd things. And sort of, the capitalism doesn't care too much, but if we plot these things out on a gradient, again, it gives us a bit of a framework to think of the work we're doing and why we're doing it. Now, these aren't all completely obvious things. I wanted to be polite, so I didn't put a dildo on the left. I might as well have, right? That's a cultural product for something, yeah. I was too polite to put it on that slide, but I'm going to put it on the next slide. So it's exploring vestigial urges. It sort of doesn't make sense. But then when you start exploring these gradients, you realize that there are some screw-ups with them. Because, of course, who is to say that this isn't a tool for exploring creative something? Which sort of, doesn't tell us anything. But it tells us that well, it reminded me that there are some weird things going on with technology. And technologies can break some of these obvious gradients. Now, it's a bit of a difficult story, but I'm just going to scroll back 30 years. How to even tell this story? So, there's a French CEO of a television station, okay? And a commercial television station. This at a time, of course, when commercial TV is not completely new, but it's relatively new, and people are still trying to understand sort of, culturally and economically what that means. And of course, the commercial TV stations have been given spectrum by the government, so they sort of answer to the government a bit. Now, so this intellectual French CEO of a television station, he's been asked by a journalist in an interview, and he's not really careful, so by the way, he retracted all this later, but he's been asked about advertising, and he says, yeah, culturally, legally, and sort of politically, we can't only show ads. So what we do instead is, between the ads, we show you stuff that prepares you for the ads. Okay? So this is a low-tech TV station. They're putting Betamax tapes into decks and sort of making kind of quarterly decisions for how to program their content in order to maximize the ads. Now, imagine a social network making decisions with a deep neural network on maybe a million times per second, which 3 items to show between the ads to maximize the output of the ads. That's a tool, it's a technology that is driving things that are very different from the sort of the beautiful toolness that we've been focusing on. And maybe it got the wrong president elected even, who knows, but it's a really, really strange force. And again, bringing it back to kind of our work and what we're doing here, when we give the power to AIs, we let them maximize utility functions, and we give it a utility function that is a bit thoughtless. That tool will now go and do really, really strange things and screw up some of these gradients and move something that is really a tool for social interaction into sort of a different spot in the gradient. I think it should be a reminder to all of us to kind of go back to the basics of why we learned our craft, why we started building our things, and focus on, how do we work on the technologies we're working on, and focusing on bringing them upwards the slope of toolness, from not so much a tool to a proper real tool to a tool that makes tools and enables others to do things and builds platforms on which people can participate and really help each other and really build stuff. And slightly religiously perhaps, I'll just bring it back for a second to the Whole Earth Catalog with its mission of access to tools, and it has a mission statement. Mission statements are weird things. I think they're also powerful. The text here, slightly edited for length, it feels quite dated, but I'll just read it with you, and then I'll leave you to the day, because again, this is the epicenter. I mean, this is all the whole Earth, and we are the ones that are creating these platforms, okay? So we are as gods, and might as well get good at it. Remote power, as via government, big business, formal education, has succeeded to the point where gross defects obscure actual gains. A realm of intimate personal power is developing, power of the individual to conduct her own education, find her own inspiration, shape her own environment, and share her adventure with whoever is interested. Tools that aid this process are sought and promoted by the Whole Earth Catalog. This is written in '68. I think we could not sum it up better. So with that, I leave you to the wonderful second day of the conference, and I hope to see you on the floor. Thank you so much for listening.